think we F1 fans have been wondering about this for a very long time. Why is Nico Hulkenberg so gosh darn popular? Despite having no podiums to his name, and yet that doesn't seem to matter. Now you might be thinking that I'm scrabbling for content ideas, but the talk of Nico has been pestering the back of my mind for months now in regards to transfers. Why is this driver so persistently present in discussions in regards to future seats in Formula 1? For every team that has a seat open for 2025, Nico Hulkenberg just seemingly pops up out of nowhere. Admittedly, it's a bit of a harebrained option, but it's always there. There are very few drivers that could elicit that kind of a reaction where, say, an F1 team has an open seat and people might go, ooh, Nico Hulkenberg, and not everybody dismisses it. You're the talk of the town, yet nobody picks you. Yet unfortunately, that seems to have been the watchword for his entire career. I mean, it's almost become a meme at this point. And yet, regardless of all of that, he is still a driver of interest. And some people, yeah, sure, they might want to lump him into the group of drivers that are surplus to requirements, that should move aside for younger drivers. You know, your Bottas's, your Zhous, your Sargents, your Magnussens. I feel like in the case of Nico Hulkenberg, you can't do that. It's all to do with his career at large. Sure, it's not exactly the most electric out there, but it elicits a warm smile, a charming one. Nico's always been a very nice addition to the grid. Everyone likes him. Everyone thinks he's chill. You'd be sad if he wasn't there, and we were sad when he disappeared from Renault when they dropped him for Ocon, but you wouldn't really miss him all that much if he was gone for a long time. And thanks to Racing Point in 2020, he wasn't gone for a very long time. And he got a brand new nickname, aside from Nico Hulkenberg, the super sub. He managed to put that pink Mercedes on the second row after having been a pundit just a couple of days ago, and of course he hadn't gone through all of the training, and then he still managed to get some points in that car. That made people think, blimey, Nico's still pretty good, he's still got it. Which is why I think any midfield team worth their weight in salt should seriously consider Nico Hulkenberg. And also why I like to partner him up with Carlos Sainz. In fact, if I were to be a manager of an F1 team, I would sign Carlos and Nico on the spot. That combination is a really, really good one, especially if you give them a really good car. And that is the lineup Sauber/Audi are trying to acquire for 2025. It's almost like they read my mind. Yes, go ahead. Throw the argument at me of, oh, they're only signing him because he's German. And, well, I mean, I can't argue with that because, well, he is German. But what I can dispute is that there is more to Nico Hulkenberg than just his ability to say screwdriver in his native tongue. Which, by the way, is Kreuzschraubenzieher here. GCSE German's still kind to me. Sauber have had previous with Nico Hulkenberg back in 2013. He practically he did carry that team to 7th place in the Constructors, which for Sauber is pretty darn impressive, considering that the other driver for Sauber only scored once, and he only seemed to keep getting better and better throughout the entire season. Arguably, Sauber being one of the beneficiaries of the changing compound of Pirelli tyres after Silverstone and all of the blowouts, which saw Red Bull excel. Sauber probably got their own little bit of a benefit as well, because after that, they kept getting with Nico 6th, 5th, and even that 4th place in Korea. The calling card from Nico to try and entice Force India to signing him back again after dropping him, which is exactly what happened, and then he went on to arguably have one of the best seasons of his career and helping get Force India to 4th place in the Constructors along with Checo. If only Nico hadn't been sacked by Williams in his rookie year, which is exactly what happened with Jenson Button in 2000, 10 years previously. Just goes to show, if you're a rookie, do not sign for Williams, and that's a foreboding for Logan Sargent, I'm just saying. But seriously, Nico Hulkenberg had a really glittering junior career, and his rookie season at Williams was not terrible. And it did carry him well when he went over to Force India, because for the 2013 F1 driver market, Nico Hulkenberg was one of the hot tickets. A lot of teams were seriously thinking about Nico for their lineups, including Mercedes and Ferrari. And Nico was genuinely flattered by being considered as one of the best candidates to go and partner Fernando Alonso for 2013. And then he would have been even more flattered with Niki Lauda saying that if they hadn't been able to acquire the services of Lewis Hamilton for 2013, they would have signed Nico Hulkenberg instead. And even when they didn't sign him, Niki Lauda kept championing Hulkenberg throughout his entire career until Niki's death in 2019. In a way, maybe that was for the best that he didn't go to Mercedes because, you know, Coming in after Michael Schumacher in an all-German lineup, that would have been a very tough act to follow if you were not a world champion. And as for the Ferrari gig, it looked really, really close for Nico, because Felipe Massa that year, for the first half of 2012, did not look all that great. And to be fair, that car was not great. It was the fourth fastest car. But at the same time, Fernando was making that car sing all the way through to a championship contention. And had it not been for those 2 podiums that Massa acquired at Suzuka and Interlagos, I think Nico would have genuinely replaced Felipe, because sure, the goodwill after his accident in 2009 would have helped carry him through to another season at Ferrari, but it would have only carried him so far if he wasn't able to get a podium whilst his teammate was bagging wins. So in a way, you could describe Nico Hulkenberg as the Sir Robin of Formula 1, the person who nearly bagged a seat at Mercedes, who almost bagged a seat at Ferrari. He nearly bagged these seats at big top teams, but he couldn't quite do it. And now he's in a position where he thinks that that ship has sailed, that a top team opportunity is beyond him. Or is it? Because I think it's a really big possibility that he could get a chance with a pretty decent team, or a team that is definitely on the up. Because signing Nico Hulkenberg for your team is a PR no-brainer. It's a shoo-in. It's an open goal. It's a win no matter which way you look at it. Be the one to give Nico Hulkenberg the chance to bag his first F1 podium. Watch the fans erupt with jubilation, heralding you as the savior of Nico Hulkenberg's career, ending that duck of over 200 races without a single podium, so many fourth places, and not one third. I think Nico would be happy with a third. He would blow up with excitement. The entire F1 community would be absolutely over the moon with goodwill. Everyone would be happy with it. No one would be sad about it, and for good reason. Because if you look back into the 2010s, there were so many characters throughout the grid that really got under your skin. Whereas with Nico Hulkenberg, I was just like, yeah, he's a nice guy. He's cool. He was just a guy who was pretty good at Formula 1 and doing his job. He just got on with things, and sure, you might think that's boring and dull, but for a Formula 1 team, sometimes with a driver, you want boring and dull, so long as it gets you results, which in the case of Nico, it did. Not to mention that his junior career was pretty good. He did bag a GP2 title with ART Grand Prix, the same outfit that got Lewis Hamilton his GP2 world title, so he did come with some really good credentials throughout the days where he was getting into Formula 1. There was a lot of delight and hype with Nico, and it's just such a shame that he never got the chance to drive for a top team, because I think if he did, what with his qualifying ability and bagging that pole in Interlagos, he would have bagged quite a few wins. But it's all a case of shoulda, woulda, coulda, if only. But there are still some instances where he does have his moments, of course, but just in a midfield capacity. And yes, I know you're going to be throwing the "suck my balls, mate" comment that he had with Magnussen, but those two are over it completely. That was just water under the bridge. That was a flash in the pan. And the fact that that's the only thing you can come up with Nico is testimony to my argument, because that's all you got. But that adage has stuck with Nico Hulkenberg. Balls have stuck within Nico's head, because in regards to his F1 future, he said balls have started rolling. What's wrong with me? I'm a dad for crying out loud. I shouldn't find this funny. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Nico has managed to manifest a very coveted reputation amongst the lower end of the grid, having never had the chance to try his luck with a front-running team. He proved to be an amiable, harmless personality, whilst also delivering solid results. Sure, he wasn't a firecracker of a personality, or he didn't have a really big smile which charmed millions of people at once like a Daniel Ricciardo would at Toro Rosso, but in terms of the Formula 1 outfit, he did get you results, and he was amiable, he was likeable, he was charming, and in terms of an F1 paddock and an F1 garage with the crew, you want somebody who's inoffensive, harmless, and just a generally nice guy to be around, who's also really experienced and also brings in things to be happy about, which was the case at Haas last year. And therefore, you are going to be wanting to work your socks off to get the best opportunity for that driver possible. You don't really get the sense of Nico being a jerk, do you? He's only 36, which is a lot younger than many people think because he's been around for so long. And the work he's done at Haas is testimony to the fact that he's still got it. He's not showing signs of getting any slower because he was able to get the Haas of 2023 into Q3 on multiple occasions. And he bagged most of the points for Haas, which shows that he was pulling a Yuki Tsunoda of Haas and that he was giving the team some sense of hope Even if they weren't able to translate a Q3 appearance into actual points, the prospect of getting a point or two was still there. Steiner's act in keeping Hulkenberg exercising the 1+1 deal that he had was the last great act of his career with that team as team principal. It was the last saving grace, being able to keep that driver for 2024, now under the guidance of Ao Komatsu, and the performance being better than expected, even for the team, because the correlation between wind tunnel and track is actually better on track. So that's making you just go with that team, for the first time of many hopefully, Ayo! It's clear that Haas wouldn't mind keeping Nico around for that little bit longer, since his influence has clearly made a positive impact to some extent. And I don't think those results have gone unnoticed, because there are many teams out there, as Nico has said, that are interested in acquiring his services. Those balls that are rolling, they have started in earnest. And I don't think it's just the likes of Haas wanted to keep him, or the Sauber Audi project wanted him. Perhaps Aston Martin or Mercedes could be interested in getting Nico for 2025. I mean, if you really want to push the boat out, but wait, look, are you serious? Mercedes and Aston Martin, just a few minutes ago, you were talking about Sauber getting Hulkenberg and how that would be good, partnering up with Sainz. Yes, that's very, very true. But right now, the Sauber Audi project is not looking all that enticing. And I think that's why it's giving Nico pause for thought. Sure, he had good times back in the past, but that was in the past, and a lot of things can change in that time. Because so far, the team currently known as Filet Mignon F1 team really are not setting the world alight. In fact, okay, they are setting the world alight, but for very, very bad reasons. Granted, Audi have committed to the team 100% finally and ended many months of speculation about their desire to be in F1 at all, but the present lot is not all that enticing. I mean, that could easily change as the season progresses and they get over their bugs and their defects with their pit stop equipment. They might be able to get on top of their brand new car concept and improve it gradually, meaning that they could score a point or two and maybe break away from Alpine and Williams and go after Haas and Racing Bulls, but that's in the future right now. And thusly, that's why I think Carlos and Nico are not exactly chomping at the bit to sign on the dotted line with Sauber/Audi. They're biding their time, which, in the case of Carlos, is running a little bit thin, because apparently, according to reports, Audi are getting a little bit impatient with Carlos and are really giving him the hurry up in making his decision about where he's going to go next year, because there are reports that he's going to Mercedes for a 1+1 deal, and then Audi's giving him a timeline in which to say, you better sign up with us or you can forget that leadership role. As for Aston Martin and Mercedes, when you step back a little and look at it all in perspective, you just take a look at the entire perspective around you. Just look over there. Look over there as well. Yes, I know that's a cold storage tank, but just hear me out. Those two teams are not crazy propositions. Like I alluded to earlier, Mercedes is a team that Nico knows very well. In fact, that could have been a team that Nico could have driven for 2013 had Lauda gotten his way and Lewis Hamilton decided to say thanks but no thanks and stick with McLaren. Lauda always championed Hulkenberg. What if Toto Wolff were to remember the comments of Niki Lauda and perhaps make his former mentor's dream a reality? Granted, it would be a 1 year sort of jobby. Like I said in my Mercedes has a seat that nobody wants video, it would merely be a means to an end, whoever drives for that team. And that's why I think Carlos Sainz really shouldn't be considered for that role, because we all know that Toto is desperate to sign Kimi Antonelli for 2025 or 2026 at the latest. Whoever drives for that team will go in knowing that that team isn't fully backing them, that they are just keeping a seat warm. And Nico Hulkenberg might be aware of that, and he might be just thinking with a shrug, okay, let's do it, because he is near the end of his career. This might be his last team transfer, but hey, going to Mercedes, that's not a bad shout considering where you are. I mean, Haas is getting better at the moment, but I'm sorry, Haas fans. When you compare Mercedes and Haas, the odds of a podium are really stacked in the favour of Mercedes. I mean, Haas will get better and really be in with a shout of getting 6th place in the Constructors if all goes well and their upgrades consistently are good. But come on, Mercedes, they've bagged titles and Haas have not. If he were to go to Brackley and partner up with George Russell for a year, I think it could be a fairly decent combination and a really good stopping off point, just to try and get Mercedes back on an even keel with a driver who can do really well in qualifying, because it just goes to show qualifying is a bit of a weakness for Mercedes, and if they can get somebody who can outperform a car like that, that could be gold dust. And George Russell has said that he's open to all options regarding a teammate, so I don't think you get any resistance from George. You just go, All right, chaps. Yep, pick that driver. All right, spiffing, jolly good, fun. And also for Nico, it would be a case of unfinished business. What if finally realized, and the younger Nico would be really happy with the older Nico's acquisition. Formula One would be happy as well. But I'll tell you one person who wouldn't be happy with that. Romain Grosjean. Nico getting to drive a Mercedes before him because he's still waiting for that opportunity, nearly 4 years on. Come on, Toto, what are you doing? As for Aston Martin, well, it would be technically him returning to that team for a third or fourth time, depending on how you're counting it. But it would be a pretty shrewd decision because the team know him well. They know exactly what Nico Hulkenberg is capable of, him having been a reserve driver, as we saw in earnest at Silverstone, and in 2020 as a whole. He was able to do the goods at a very short pinch, that he was able to qualify well in a car he was really not familiar with, in a way. And sure, he wouldn't be as fast as he was in 2014 when he partnered up with Checo and got Force India to 4th place in the Constructors, not for the first time, may I mention, because, 2020. If he were to drive for them in 2025, if Lance Stroll got the boot, his qualifying prowess might be seen in earnest once more for that team. And that is something that Aston Martin desperately needs if they want to have a really viable shout at getting 4th place in the Constructors before Honda come along with their ambitions. Having that chance to be in Q3 with both drivers and secure double points finishes on the regular, alongside the mercurial talents of Fernando Alonso with the stable talents of Nico Hulkenberg, that could be a really potent combination before they go for the big time and the big prize of the world title. That is a really good shout for somebody they know well and could easily gel well with, because that's exactly the problem that Lance Stroll has had. Sure, he can have his moments, he can get really good starts, but at the same time, qualifying has been his biggest weakness, where he somehow ends up in the 5th fastest car out in Q1 or in Q2, and that means he has to work much harder to get anything out of it. Sure, Australia was the exception. He got a P6, which is something to be credited for, credit where credit is due, but for the most part, qualifying has been his biggest bugbear, which is kind of weird because in the past he used to qualify pretty decently. Sometimes, despite them being in the same car, Fernando and Lance, it's like they're driving in different categories. Having Nico alongside Fernando might be a good shout in the short term until Fernando decides it's time to give up and hang up his helmet and then move on to his next stage of his Aston Martin career, either as a special advisor or just a guy that hangs around in a cap like Niki Lauda would. And I bet if Nico were to retire with Aston Martin, he pretty much would be doing the same. But aside from previous loyalty, being with Aston Martin right now is not a bad shout considering where they're going. They are going to be the works outfit alongside Honda. Aramco, their fuel supplier, is looking really potent in regards to their works with synthetic fuel. Partnering up with the right fuel supplier is going to be crucial in 2026. It's like with power units, you really got to get the right combination. And considering how well Honda have been doing, having Honda and Aramco working together with Aston Martin, who are building up their facilities, you've really got to consider that team now. And no, this is not the Honda outfit of 2015 we're talking about here. This is practically the same operation that has been powering Max Verstappen to world title after world title after world title. This is going to be quite an interesting venture for any driver. And that's why Fernando Alonso is pretty keen to be working with Honda once more, and why all of that stuff with GP2 engines is water under the bridge. Yes, I know, Lance Stroll is still there and it's looking like he will remain there for the foreseeable future, but if Aston do eschew the likes of the boss's son and move him over to the hypercar project, which is the common hope and prospect, having Hulkenberg and Alonso might be a really good, solid, dependable operation and combination. You might be noticing that I'm not really talking about Audi all that much, despite who they are, because, well, it's Audi. They're buying a team. They're coming into Formula One. They're a big German automaker. Well, Mercedes are a big German automaker as well, but there's not really much to get excited about regarding Audi. Sure, they're coming in. Fantastic. Brilliant. They committed. Finally, after loads and loads of months of dithering. But aside from that, that's all they got. Sauber right now aren't really setting the world alight. They're making headlines for the wrong reasons with their cross-threading issues in pit stops. A 4-second pit stop being a victory? Come on! And yes, there's a brand new car concept, but James Key is saying that 2027 will be the year when Audi are really going to come good. That's 3 years away. There's not much to get hyped about in the public eye. Sure, Drivers might be privy to more information behind the scenes, confidentiality and all that. But you've got what's going on with Aston Martin, working with Honda. You've got Mercedes and their power unit being supposedly quite good as well. Them changing their car concept. They're going through a rebuilding phase, which is sort of interesting. They are working on things which are quite good. Haas right now, they're under new leadership, and Gene Haas has recommitted his presence in Formula One. That's always interesting as well. So Nico could easily stay with Haas alongside Oliver Behrman. That could be a potent combination as well. But that might be the safe option, because I think for this last Hail Mary, Nico really needs to take risks and try and bag that seat at Mercedes, despite that being a seat that nobody wants. Maybe Nico might want it, and I think we would all want to see that, but Aston Martin might be the most logical decision if he can convince the board to get rid of Lance Stroll, which would be a really, really big feat, trying to convince Papa Stroll to ditch his son. If you pick Nico Hulkenberg, you will not be disappointed, because you will be bagging a very, very good egg. So I mentioned Carlos Sainz in passing, him potentially being a good teammate for Nico Hulkenberg at Sauber if he chooses to go there. But what about all of the hubbub concerning him going to Red Bull perhaps to partner up with Max Verstappen? That could be a very chaotic combination, but one I would welcome with open arms. As I detail in this video here, you can go and watch right now. I want to see the chaos, and I bet you do too.